PSA, PWCC, we need to have another talk. There's some things that have happened in the last few days that once again highlight some of the inconsistencies and maybe somewhat hypocrisy with their selling platform, PWCC, and then also PSA's guarantee. While some of the information I will talk to today is well known at this stage, and it's something we've talked to actually multiple times on this channel. Like I said, some auctions have ended recently that I think are super relevant to talk to because it highlights, a huge gap that makes me wonder what the heck are we actually paying for when we are in fact using these services. And to give you guys some context, this essentially relates to this auction over here. And this is for a Eusebio de Silva rookie card, or so it seems. So this was sold on PWCC's platform in the last week and essentially sold for $4,200. And what's very important to keep front of mind here is that this card was, mislabeled by PSA. They accidentally said it was the 1961-1962 Eusebio rookie card, right? Which is a very rare sticker and is something that, collectors in the vintage soccer space chase, actively, right? It's one of those things, whilst not super expensive, it's sort of very hard to find. And as you can sort of see there, PSA population 1 of 1, there is none graded higher than the PSA 3 that this one was given. Now, this is interesting because, like I said, PSA mislabeled it because they made a reprint of this in 1971, and this is actually the 1971 copy. And this is something that's sort of super common in the soccer space. I know it happens in the US sports as well, but this is super common for vintage soccer, especially stickers, because there's so many people creating the stickers and all that sort of stuff, so many licenses out there. That sort of everybody did what they wanted to do. They printed whatever they wanted. They also, printed things in when they didn't have licenses, right? So it's sort of a difficult thing to monitor, right? Which is why, grading, especially for vintage soccer, is so damn important because there are so many nuances and intricacies and all that kind of stuff that you have to monitor when looking to buy this sort of stuff. Now, what's interesting is that PSA's guarantee does not cover the buyer in this instance, and that's a very key thing to call out because this card did in fact sell for $4,200. But given that it is the 1971 that I just mentioned, it should have only sold for less than 100. If that, some people have told me it's probably only a $30 card. And to give you some context, PSA's guarantee says this: the guarantee does not apply to any item as to which a clerical or mechanical error, i.e. a typo or a mislabel, has been made with respect to the card specification, set, variation, or parallel. So basically, what PSA is saying here, their guarantee that they put out there for the market to say, if we make a mistake, we're going to cover you, doesn't cover people in this specific instance. And I will say this, if buyers need to be doing their own due diligence and all that sort of stuff before buying things, I can understand why PSA, feel the way they do about maybe having a somewhat different guarantee for their label, for the mislabel, and buyers ultimately need to do their own research. At the same sort of time, it doesn't sort of sit right with me, and I'll share my thoughts on that in a second. But in terms of doing your own research, this specific card, the 1961 rookie specifically, is a little bit hard to find images online, right? It's not something that's readily available, so I can sort of somewhat understand PSA making a mistake. I'll share more on that in a second. But as a buyer, you might find it difficult to do some research. And I should have mentioned at the start, multiple people reached out about this rookie card, specifically to me and about this issue on PWCC. One person, in fact, emailed me with this screenshot, what you're seeing right now, and that is, what the 1961 actually looks like. And you can sort of see here that the image is identical because it's a clear-cut reprint. The only difference is the text on the back. So what, the soccer sticker manufacturers essentially did was when you put the sticker in the book, you obviously can't see the back anymore. So they would put the text that's on the back of the sticker above it so you can still read it, right? You can basically stick the sticker in the booklet and still read the facts. And what you can see here is that there's a clear difference between the 61 and the 71 because the 61 talks to his goals to date, right? Up until the 1961 season. He's only just come in, he's a rookie. It's very short and sharp. But what the 71 reprint does, and this is the clear-cut tell for prospective buyers, is that it has a lot more context because it talks about him, I believe, having 43 goals, I think is what that refers to, and details in which games and all that sort of stuff, very clearly referencing, his decade-long career beforehand. So it's pretty clear-cut that it is a reprint, which is why, it is very surprising that PSA missed this, right? You're expecting PSA to be this, pillar within the sports card space. They're meant to be the best of the sports card graders, and you expect them to not be making a mistake like this. And whilst people need to be doing their own research, the fact that that mistake can occur is quite unfortunate. But this was sort of where things doubled down a bit further as we've talked to PWCC in the past. We've mentioned these, soccer syndicates quite a lot, and I mentioned it again the other day actually. And you've had these issues with PWCC essentially saying, well, yes, we've got fakes coming in from PSA. Yes, we've got fakes coming in from BGS. We've put them on our platform. We've relied on the fact that PSA and BGS are doing what they should be doing. So we're basically re-spitting out the same information that they've said. And as you saw from that auction, it does mention 61, right? So it doesn't say it's a 71 reprint or anything like that. But then when it comes time for you as a buyer to try and get a refund or some kind of, compensation from PWCC for the error, they'll say, you need to go talk to PSA, you need to go talk to BGS. And, like I said in the past, when we've referenced BGS, that is a huge problem because BGS don't have a guarantee at all. So in the case of fake cards making it through from this syndicate in a PSA slab, you can go back to PSA and they'll say, yes, we've effed up. We're going to, refund you the market value, which is a really good thing, right? But in this case, because it is a mislabel, you are shit out of luck essentially. And yes, whilst you should still be doing your research, that does not sit right with me. And it makes me question, okay, well, what are these businesses actually giving us as customers? Is that kind of wording from PSA, and I'll go back to it now, in their guarantee sufficient for the current status of the hobby, the current state of the hobby, where cards are worth what they actually are? Yes, it is a clerical or mechanical error. It's a mislabel, and it's quite a significant one financially, right? You're talking about a $4,000 USD difference. That might not be a lot of money for most, or for some, but it is a lot of money for most, I should say. So the fact they've made that error, is that sufficient? Is that sufficient to still be like this within their guarantee? Should they still be looking after customers in this specific instance? I personally think they should be, because like I said, the whole situation is then made worse because PWCC then say, well, sorry, customer, you have to go back to PSA. It's like, well, no, PWCC, what kind of due diligence are you guys doing on your own end to protect your customers? Because this is a clear cut error. Surely your customers should be better protected. And then in the instance of, mislabels not being part of a guarantee, or even in the instance of BGS not having a guarantee at all, why are you still comfortable listing this sort of stuff on your platform? I mentioned this the other day in my video as well around BGS specifically, because they've got that huge problem, right? So many of those fake stickers as part of that syndicate have gone through BGS slabs, and I'll put a link on screen for you to reference that video if you have not seen it, right? And, in one of my videos, I talked about the fact that one of the head, analysts from PWCC looking at, fraud and all that kind of stuff, basically came out and said, well, yes, the community knows that these are fake. BGS is saying it's genuine, but they don't always know. The community knows more than them. And he sort of implied that BGS have an issue being able to spot fakes and all that kind of stuff. So my mind then goes, like I said in that video, well, if you PWCC, someone so senior that's looking at this fraud detection and all that kind of stuff, you know that BGS have an issue. Why do you allow those cards to continue to come on your platform? Like, why aren't you doing anything about that? And it's just one of those ones where you've got people shifting the buck, puck, whatever the saying is, right? They're shifting the blame to somebody else. But it's like, as a customer, PWCC, where's your ownership of the situation? PSA, where's your ownership of the situation? Yes, I understand that people should be doing their due diligence, but this is a fairly big chunk of change for many people. So why is sort of that okay for that gap to be there? And then more importantly, why not more people pushing back against this? And, at the end of the day, people will say that, yes, they need to do their own research. The blame's on you as the buyer. Sure, I can sort of understand that. But in this particular instance, it's very hard to find, what the 1961 actually looks like. And sure, you can see the back of the card and see it references many years. So that should set off alarm bells in your head. But, unfortunately, so many people are a bit naive these days, and they trust the labels too much. But that's where my messaging is essentially going. Should you be trusting the labels given the guarantee is structured the way that it is? Should you be trusting BGS labels given that they don't stand by what they're giving you? It's like, well, what are you paying for? It's part of the reason, why I just sent off some cards to CGC, because whilst PSA have a guarantee, they don't protect you if you are the submitter. Their guarantee only protects you if you are a buyer, which is good to have, right? And they limit it to $250,000. But if you are the submitter, you don't get the guarantee. And it mentions it somewhere here. The guarantee does not apply to and cannot be utilized by the original submitter, which is very disappointing, which is why I sent some cards to CGC, because they have a guarantee irrespective of whether you are the submitter or a buyer of the card. And for me personally, I want to buy graded cards for that peace of mind, right? I want to have those things in my collection to know, okay, this thing is genuine. So if I ever try to sell it, I'm protected in some capacity, right? Somebody's looked over it and given their guarantee. But these days you've got BGS looking at things, and then wording means squat, right? It doesn't mean shit all. They've basically put you in a slab and you got no protection. And if it comes out as fake, so be it. PSA do it sort of half well, but then they let themselves down by doing things like that mislabel. It's like, well, guys, where are we going within this hobby? Like, why are people sort of ignoring this sort of stuff? And I sort of know the answer, right? Because people don't care. People just want to make that quick flip and all that kind of stuff. But little things like this is okay to challenge and push back on, because we need to be asking these guys, you need to be doing better for us. What are you doing? Where's the value for us as a customer? And then same back to PWCC. With these things in mind, and you know that these businesses have these shortcomings within their policies and procedures, what are you doing to protect customers? And unfortunately, in this specific case, all the messaging that's come towards me is that this customer is shit out of luck, and they've basically now paid $4,000 for something that's not worth anywhere near that $4,000, and it's obviously going to be impossible to sell because people are going to see this story, they're going to see, you know, the vintage soccer chats and all that kind of stuff and say, well, okay, now we know this is a mistake. And while some people clued onto it, like I said, you know, it's a bit hard to find what the actual 61 looks like, and maybe people couldn't do their research. But again, you should be doing your own research, but that's the key messaging for this. Number one, do your own research. Don't trust these labels because these businesses are not doing everything that they should be doing when you're paying them, right? You're paying for a service, you're paying for a guarantee, essentially, right? You're paying for them to say the card is genuine and that the card and the grade is accurate, right? That doesn't mean much. So do your own research, don't trust these labels, and push back on these companies when they say this sort of stuff is okay, because in my opinion, having a guarantee not protecting a mislabel is not okay in this day and age. And it's very different to modern sports cards. It is very different to TCG and all that kind of thing. It's not okay to have it when it happens with vintage soccer. So maybe they need to give some clarification there. I don't know what the solution is, and people will say that it's clear cut in their policies and procedures. It's clear cut in their guarantee that you are shit out of luck if you do this. So you know that you're protected, you know that you're not protected. That's not the point. My point is it okay that they have it like that when the hobby is in the state that it's currently in, where things are worth so much and all that kind of stuff? So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I know I went on a long rant there, but I think it's an important, you know, discussion to have. It's like, what are we paying for when we use these services? What are these, you know, auction houses doing to protect us? What are all these other, you know, pillars of this hobby, right? These businesses that are meant to be the ones that people flock to spend their money. It's like, well, what are they doing? What value are they giving us? And I've been talking to this to death for, you know, practically 3 years now, and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse at times, but it's one of those things that needs to be uplifted. So I'm curious to see what happens next. So, you know, as always, please share your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.